Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. I would like to have your attention for the fourth panel session titled Realizing Exports Potential. I would like to invite Ms. Shandana Gulzar Khan, Member, National Assembly of Pakistan and Parliamentary Secretary, Ministry of Commerce, Government of Pakistan. The guest of honor is His Excellency Jean-Francois Coutan. He's the Ambassador, European Union Delegation to Pakistan. I would like to invite the honorable panelist of this session, Professor Dr. Athar Akbari from St. Mary's University, Halifax, Canada. Welcome, sir. I would like to invite Ms. Anjum Asad Amin, Ministry of Commerce, Islamabad. Welcome, ma'am. I would like to invite Dr. Rashid Aftab, Director, RIPA Institute of Public Policy, RIPA International University, Islamabad. And last but not the least, I would like to invite Fayaz Hussain, Economist and Joint Director, State Bank of Pakistan. Welcome, sir. Please allow me to introduce the worthy speakers and panelists. As chair of the session, we have Ms. Shandana Gulzar Khan. Ms. Shandana Gulzar Khan is Member, National Assembly of Pakistan and Parliamentary Secretary at Ministry of Commerce, Government of Pakistan. She has experience in trade and investment. She's a legal professional with a demonstrated history of working in the legal services industry, skilled in negotiation, international trade, international economic law, policy analysis, strategic legal frameworks, and dispute settlements. She holds master's degree in law from University of Cambridge, focusing corporate governance, economics of law and regulation, WTO and international economic law. Our guest of honor is His Excellency Jean-Francois Coutan. He is the Ambassador of the European Union to Pakistan. He has extensive work experience in the field of European Union external relations. His main area of expertise include international cooperation and assistance to developing countries, political analysis and dialogue, post-conflict situations, and civil society. He has been serving within EU as head of operations of the European Commission. He actively contributed to the establishment of the new European External Action Service, where he was appointed as team leader in the policy. As panelists, we have Dr. Athar Hussain Akbari. Dr. Akbari is a professor of economics at St. Mary's University in Halifax, Canada. He teaches labor economics and microeconomics. His main area of research is immigration economics. He has conducted several immigration-related projects for federal and provincial governments in Canada and also serves on government committees as external reviewer and academic representative. He chairs the Atlantic Research Group on Economics of Immigration, Aging and Diversity at Sobhi School of Business. Dr. Akbari attended University of Karachi and Simon Fraser University to obtain his master's and doctorate degrees. We have with us Ms. Anjum Asad Amin. Anjum Asad Amin is a former civil servant having 35 years of experience in finance and economics, public policy, and trade policies. Her assignments include additional Secretary Trade Diplomacy, Ministry of Commerce, Additional Secretary Economic Affairs Division, Director General Pakistan Institute of Trade and Development, Member NDMA, and Joint Secretary Commerce and Economic Affairs Division. She represented Government of Pakistan in Sweden as Commercial Consular and Netherlands as Commercial Secretary. She is Trade Sector Specialist for multilateral and bilateral agreements on trade, financial and economic cooperation, negotiations on FTAs, WTO trade policy, trade promotion, and international trade laws. She has taught economics at PIDE and University of Sargodha. She also delivered series of lectures on Pakistan economics at Foreign Services Academy. Anjum is a PhD Fellow in Economics of Innovation and Growth from Royal Institute of Technology, Stockholm, and holds MS in International Economics from Birkbeck College, University of London, UK. We have with us Dr. Rashid Aftab. Dr. Rashid Aftab is Director, Faculty of Public Policy, RIPA International University, Islamabad. He was involved in planning, coordinating, and monitoring of various socio-economic, water resources, human resources development, SME, and telecom projects in Ministry of Science and Technology, Ministry of Environment, Local Government and Rural Development, Ministry of Industries and Production, and Neatel Micronet. The program development and implementation liaison with international agencies like UNESCO, World Bank, USAID, UNDP, Asian Development Bank, and UNIDO. Dr. Aftab holds PhD in public policies and governance from Utrecht University in Netherlands, and he holds MBA, MSc Organizational Sciences and Good Governance, and BSc in Engineering. Last but not the least, we have our panelist, Mr. Fayaz Hussain, economist and Joint Director, State Bank of Pakistan. He's an expert on external sector, especially trade, exchange rate, and foreign exchange management. Now I'd like to request the chair, Ms. Chandana Gulzar Khan, to initiate the session. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum ji, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you very much ji for inviting me to chair this exceptionally exciting session where I'm concerned, because I'm an exports person, and I hope you're as looking forward to listening to our speakers as I am today. I think today we've changed a little bit our order of speakers, and we're going to be starting with Dr. Rashid Aftab. He's the director of RIFA Institute of Public Policy, RIFA International University, Islamabad. Perhaps a little bit I could explain to our panelists for their ease. We have, I think, nearly 15 minutes for each one of you. We would be hoping that if your presentations could take between 10 and 12 minutes, to give about 5 minutes to the audience to ask questions, because we think if we leave the questions to the end, people lose interest in your train of thought. And we want to be able to do justice to each one of you. And so you should have your time right now rather than at the end of it. That's okay, Dr. Saab, we begin with you.
Thank you. Good afternoon and Assalamu alaikum. In fact, my today's presentation is in context, obviously, with the potential of the exports of various sectors from Pakistan. Primarily, for the last more than 50 years, what we are focusing, our exports are primarily dependent on the very few sectors. We have never explored the possibilities of the non-traditional sectors in Pakistan, which has huge potential exist. So today I will be discussing the opportunities, challenges, and exploitation of the exports of the gems and jewelry sector in Pakistan. This is primarily the gems and jewelry sector. It may be divided into the two segments. One is the gemstone, which is obviously the gemstone means the precious stones as well as semi-precious stones. And second is the precious metals. The precious metals include the topmost metals, platinum, then is the gold, then is the palladium, and third one the silver. And this both of there is a strong correlation between the gemstone as well as the precious metal, because these gemstones are being studied in the jewelry, in the precious metal, so the values added, and then it goes to the national or the international market. We have in Pakistan is fortunate that about 18 varieties of various gemstones are occurred in Pakistan's various areas of Pakistan, particularly the north of Pakistan, the area which is adjoining Afghanistan, the Gilgit, Baltistan, Skardu, plus Chitral, and Balochistan as well. So we do have a excellent precious stone exists. Just name any of the semi-precious stone as well as precious stones. In precious stones, we do have an emerald. Swat emerald is one of the famous precious stone worldwide. And the semi-precious stones, aquamarine, tourmaline, emerald, garnet, peridot, ruby, topaz. So these stones are occurred in Pakistan. So indigenous raw material exists in this country in terms of if we add value to this raw material. This is the value chain of gemstone. The first, the foremost important thing is the mining. The mining is over here. What happened in the mining of the gemstone, that about 75% of the mining material, the gemstone which is mined from the mines are wasted because of the existing mining practices in Pakistan, which means what we are doing right now is we are observing the blast mining, and those blast mining is even are uncontrolled blast mining. Still, it's a long way forward to go into the sliced mining, in which the resource is not being wasted to such an extent. So 75% of that precious material is wasted within the mining. So only 25% it goes to in the form of the rough stone. And out of this 25%, 75% goes to the export, and this export is largely informal export. It is not the export in terms of the legal exports across the borders. So it is just, which means that most of this rough stone goes to the international markets without any adding value it. Whatever the rest is available, like the 25%, it goes to the lapidary, where the stones are cut and polished. And during that cutting and polishing, because the stones are required in specific shapes and a specific requirement, which is to be studied in the precious metals, so only 25% goes to lapidary, and within the lapidary there is again a 15% is wastage, which means only 10% is the finished product, as well as then it goes to the main hub of this gemstone trading is the Namak Mandi of Peshawar, where the most of the stones are being traded, whether those are cut or polished, or the rough stones is being done in the Namak Mandi, and only 1% of the finished product of the gemstone comes to the local market. This slides gives you an idea about the global scenario of gems and jewelry sector. It's a huge sector. It's like more than $215 billion industry. The annual growth is potentially high, like it is above 5%. Annual consumption is more than 4,000 metric tons. It's again a very huge area. Then as far as the gems and jewelry of Pakistan is concerned, the local market is about a $10 billion market. You just think about it, 170 tons of the gold is being consumed in this country. There's things in terms of the rupee value or the dollar value. And about, within the 170 tons of the gold is being consumed, 50% is the recycled, and the 50% is imported, and again that gold is being imported through the informal channels, most of the gold. So there's a huge market exists. As far as the employment is concerned, it's about 1 million workforce is associated with this sector, about 100,000 units, and the potential for an approximate potential, it's a very modest potential that exists in this country for this particular sector is $5 billion US. So if you think in terms of the total Pakistan export is 20 or 25 billion US dollars, so it can contribute a very tangible proportion from its share. Pakistan is a country which is the 8th largest consumer of the world. India is the 2nd largest consumer of the world. Pakistan is the 8th largest consumer of the world. It's a huge consumption. That's because of the 170 tons of the gold is consumed in this country. That's why it has been ranked as the 8th largest. But its contribution in terms of GDP is very, very low. About 80% is gold, 19% is silver, and less 1% is the platinum. Global gemstone trade is 40 billion. Out of 250 billion of the gems and jewelry, the gemstone trade is only 40 billion. It's again which share only 0.31%. We do have a raw material. That is the strength of this sector, that the gemstone is available. That means the raw material is available. But unfortunately, if you see in terms of the export companies, we do have only 35 companies which are the potential companies which are exporting the gems and jewelry product through the formal channels. This is the situation of the export. This is the data which reflects, it's a data from the 2001 to 2018. If you go to this data, very interesting data. Right now, we are it is less than 10 million US dollar, the total. But during 2013 and 2012, it reached to 1.1 billion US dollar, and it is also $1 billion. So that in the rest of the periods, it shows a very bleak picture in terms of its potential. So if you just eliminate these two peaks out of these graphs, which means the rest of the years, only 50% reflects with respect to these 2 years, and 50% the remaining 16 years. And if we go to the export competitiveness index, which determines the export competitiveness in terms of ranking the countries. This rank has been calculated for 89 countries, and Pakistan has been ranked on the 61. Again, a serious challenge. The main issues which rest, I think, with respect to these sectors are multiple issues which we are facing right now. One is from the regulatory framework and a tax regime. Right now, the whole gems and jewelry sector is governed through SRO 760 2013 SRO. So whatever the export or the import is to be done under this sector is being governed through this SRO, and there are serious challenges and implication with respect to the operationalizations of this SRO. And then obviously the tax regimes, it's a very irrational tax regime exists. Lack of financing to start the new business for particularly this sector is primarily it's a proprietorship sector or the SME sector. So it's a very limited opportunity exist to support this sector from other sources like EDF or something like that. One important thing, the most of the raw material which is being traded in this sector comes from the informal sector. I just give you an example. I was going through the tax collected by FBR on the diamonds which is being consumed, and the value of the diamond which is being consumed in this country, about billions of rupees. Because I just asked one of the leading exporter of the Pakistan. But when I saw the picture, it was the only amount that comes on the FBR site was 9,000 rupees were collected in terms of the diamond taxation. If we just do a small changes, whatever the carriers charge from the persons who are importing those diamonds, they charge about 2%. If we rationalize this duty up to 2%, so one can earn a huge amount of money from the tax system instead of it's going into the corruption vicious cycle. And obviously we stand nowhere in terms of branding. And interesting, if you want to send a small set of a jewelry to the Karachi, you don't have any system in this country. Like PIDE doesn't take air blue, no carrier. Similarly, it is happening in the international. If you want to export it, there is no carriers which can accept those precious items to carry to the destination country. Non-availability of the gold and precious metals. In most of the countries, the golds and the precious metals are available through the banking system. We don't have any that sort of system, as well as, and similarly the transactions, we don't have the PayPal system, so that the transactions can be, the best thing is just to wind up that if we follow the triple helix model, which means whatever the universities, research and development organizations, facilitation of the government and must work closely with the industry so we can achieve the potential of this sector, not in terms of the national requirement but as well as the export. And for this aspect, I think a holistic gems and jewelry policy is very much required so that the segmented approach can be converted into the holistic approach and the potential which exists for this sector in terms of the exports can add value to our trading system, and that trade deficit, which is critical in this country in terms of the economic growth, can be addressed to a reasonable extent. And thank you.
We have some questions from you online, so I think we've become really high tech. The question to you is, how much can we scale up the exports of jewelry? I'll tell you all of them and then you can take them together. And of course, if the audience has any question on the issue. Is this the solution to current export problems of the country? If yes, how? So essentially scaling up the exports of jewelry, how would that help the country? Have you calculated gold consumption? Yes, you already gave that answer. The gentleman says, or lady, that 5 billion gold import is not consistent with trade data of Pakistan, $5 billion. What happened in 2012-13? Why gems jewelry exports were so high, exports? Why were they not sustained in 2013 period? I think I'll just hand over these questions to you, so perhaps.
I think I've answered most of the questions. But the most critical question about it, what happened in the 2012 and 13 when the export was around of $1 billion US. That data, actually, that export doesn't reflect the real export of the gold jewelry. In 2012 and 13, what happened, the gold rate in Dubai was less, and in the Pakistan it was more. So what was happening, that the kacha gold was going to the Dubai, and it was a sort of they showed it as a export, but it was not an export in terms of the, because export is done on the through the value addition. But all that gold was exporting to the Dubai was refined again in the refineries of the Dubai market, and then the real value addition was being done in the Dubai. So then the government took some actions, and then that was not sustained. So that was not a real representation of the real exports of gems and jewelry. Thank you.
Just one question actually that I had, and of course from the audience, but I'll take it from the audience first. Any questions? Yes, please. इनको माइक दे दीजिएगा पीछे.
जी बताइए, आप ऐसे ही बता दें. नौजवान है, आप वैसी बात कर दें, क्या हो गया?
शुक्रिया सर. सर, पाकिस्तान में जो माइंस, मिनरल्स और आपने ज्वेलरी की बात की, मार्बल एक बहुत बड़ा सेक्टर है माइनिंग का, और हमारा जो मार्बल एक्सपोर्ट हो रहा है स्पेशली चाइना को रॉ फॉर्म में, अगर हम उसको इधर पाकिस्तान में उसकी वैल्यू एडिशन करके, उसकी पॉलिशिंग फिनिशिंग करके उसको एक्सपोर्ट करें तो ज़्यादा ज़र मुबादला नहीं कमाया जा सकेगा. आपकी इस बारे में क्या राय है? थैंक यू सो मच.
एक्चुअली जो ये सेक्टर है, ऑब्वियसली ये मैं आई वाज फोकस्ड टुवर्ड्स द जेम स्टोन्स. ये दूसरा सेक्टर है पाकिस्तान में, इट्स अ ह्यूज पोटेंशियल. इसका पूरा नाम है मार्बल एंड ग्रेनाइट सेक्टर. दो आपके पास ये और मौजूद हैं और बड़ी पोटेंशियल ओर्स मौजूद हैं. इस टाइम चाइनीज़ आर स्मार्ट एनफ, वो आपसे रफ़ मार्बल ख़रीद रहे हैं और उन लोगों ने 10-10 साल के एग्रीमेंट्स कर लिए हैं, और जो उसकी प्रोडक्ट्स हैं मार्बल की और ग्रेनाइट की, वहाँ पर जो है ना उस टाइम वहाँ पर ऐड वैल्यू वहाँ पर हो रही है. यहाँ पर पाकिस्तान में देयर इज़ नो डाउट इन इट कि वो जो क्वेरीज़ हैं मार्बल की या ग्रेनाइट की, वहाँ पर जो मशीनरीज़ हैं, वहाँ पर गवर्नमेंट ने चंद इनिशिएटिव्स लिए थे गवर्नमेंट ने, लेकिन स्टिल इट्स अ लॉन्ग वे टू गो कि हम जो है ना जो इंटरनेशनली तौर पे जो मार्बल और ग्रेनाइट की प्रोडक्ट्स की रिक्वायरमेंट है, उन अकॉर्डेंस वो दोज रिक्वायरमेंट जो है ना हम वो पूरी करें। एक जो मैं एक चीज़ जो मिस कर गया इस के अंदर बिकॉज ऑफ द कोई टाइम, हमारे यहाँ अभी तक हमारे यहाँ प्रीशियस मेटल्स के स्टैंडर्ड्स मौजूद नहीं हैं। वे अनफॉर्चुनेटली, और जब स्टैंडर्ड्स मौजूद नहीं होते तो अब हम जो है ना उस प्रीशियस मेटल्स को की प्योरिटी को हॉलमार्क नहीं कर सकते। दिस मीन्स वी डोंट हैव अ रेगुलेटरी फ्रेमवर्क of the gold jewelry or the platinum jewelry or the silver jewelry or the palladium jewelry to hallmark in accordance with their purity. ये इंटरनेशनल सिस्टम्स एग्जिस्ट करते हैं, इसके लिए हमें लेजिस्लेशन यहाँ चाहिए कि जो है ना जिसको हम कहते हैं assaying and hallmarking, and those assaying and hallmarking has to be in accordance with the standards. First standards notifying होने चाहिए हमारे, और उसके बाद उस in accordance with the, उसका फ़ायदा ये होता है कि आपको जो है ना जब इंटरनेशनल क्रॉस बॉर्डर जाते हैं तो आपकी ऑलरेडी वो ज्वेलरी और जो है ना प्रोडक्ट्स जो है ना वो हॉलमार्क होती है।
One final question, and that comes from me, from my own area of interest. You talked about irrational taxes on this particular sector. Yes. You also talked about that there is no holistic approach but a segmented approach. So perhaps a brief response on those two, please.
In fact, the holistic approach means obviously किसी भी for any of the sector you need a holistic policy. Unfortunately, we don't have gems and jewelry in policy in Pakistan. I don't want to go into detail. It will be a much deliberation to be done. कि उसमें आप how to integrate those instruments of the policies so that ये देखिए ये पूरी value chain होती है. If I say that I think this value chain can be like highlighted like from mine to market value chain, and there are so many issues at the mining level and in the intermediate level. I mean where it is being cut, where it is being polished, where then it is being studied in the precious metals, and then where it is being being consumed within the market, within the national market and the international market. आप just imagine that we do have such a complex system with respect to the export of the jewelry. The SRO 760 of 2013 says that you can export jewelry through two schemes. One is called entrusted schemes, and the other is called self-carrier schemes. In the first schemes, again, there is an issue that who has given you the order, he has to supply the rough material like the gold. In lieu of that gold, you have to add value through your workmanship in Pakistan and then re-export to that country. And there are so many challenges. If you talk to these the persons who are associated with this, that's a total mess up. It is a very complex process. Similarly, if somebody wants to import the gemstone as a raw material to add value into the precious materials, it's a very, very complex system in this country. Any other question? No more question? Thank you. I propose one solution because obviously there are so many. जो मैंने value chain की बात की है, उस हर value chain के एक step के ऊपर solutions मौजूद हैं. मैंने सिर्फ holistic approach की इसलिए बात की कि first of all we must have एक आपका goal तो होना चाहिए कि कहते हैं ना, सपोज अगर आप यू वांट टू $5 बिलियन की डॉलर की एक्सपोर्ट करना चाहते हैं तो आपके जो पास एक और पोटेंशियल भी है, आपके जेम्स एंड ज्वेलरी की डेडिकेटेड नेशनल पॉलिसीज़ होनी चाहिए जो कि जिसकी कॉन्करेंस हो प्रोविंशियल गवर्नमेंट्स की, क्योंकि माइंस जो है ना अंडर डोमेन आती हैं प्रोविंशियल गवर्नमेंट्स के. तो ये मेरी गुजारिश थी. जिस तरह नेशनल वाटर पॉलिसी अप्रूव की. Oh, sorry. अच्छा, I'm sorry. उन्होंने उर्दू में सवाल किया था इसलिए जवाब दे रहा था. Anyhow, what we need, we need a holistic policy for gems and jewelry sector in this country, and that gems and jewelry policy must be developed, and that must be developed in concurrence with the respective provinces, because all the mining sector rests within the domain of the provincial governments, and after the concurrence of the provincial governments, then policy initiative must be pursued in accordance with the goals of the enhancing the gems and jewelry sector, not only nationally but as well as internationally. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saab.
Thank you. Shukriya ji aapka.
If I may, the question that was asked on the holistic policy that, please have a seat. The gentleman that asked the question on the way forward, perhaps I could, when we are rounding up the discussion, I could give a little bit of insight into what is happening at the federal and provincial levels, or what we're hoping will happen, but that comes at the end. Our next guest is Professor Athar Akbari from St. Mary's University from Halifax, Canada. Dr. Saab, we're very lucky to have you today, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. My presentation is a bit different from what you heard in the first one, in that I'm looking at the impact of immigrant population on export growth in developing countries. Yesterday we heard a little bit about how the home remittances sent by overseas Pakistanis are helping maintain the Human Development Index. Today we'll be looking at the impact on on exports. The next slide, please. The World Economic Forum in a recent document identified 4-point pathways for promoting trade, attracting private investment, and achieving export diversification. These include, number one, cutting bureaucratic red tapes, and we all know how that looks like, as a step towards decreasing transaction costs of trade. Creation of a conducive regulatory and legal environment, enabling environment for improved service trade, and expand e-commerce to help reduce transaction cost of trade. In this presentation, I am arguing that we should also look at another pathway, which is the exploitation of the pool of domestic nationals residing abroad. And in order to explain why, I will take you to this website from United Nations, which provides data on movement of people and the stock of people residing in one country who came from, in one region who came from other part of the world. So, for example, and these colors look different from what they did on my computer. Okay, thank you. So here, for example, we have immigrants or migrants who moved within Asia. Okay, so this part is all Asian migrants. So these are all the Asians which moved within Asia, and there was this number which I just saw, about 63 million people who moved within Asia. And here, the Asians who moved to Europe, okay, they were about 20 million. Asians going to North America, they were about 17 million. Okay. And then there are other regions too, which are not as important as these regions were. And then similarly, you can go to other parts of the graph. For example, if you are interested in how many Asians moved from Asia to other parts of the world, okay, that can also be found in this graph. But what this graph is telling us is that most people move close to where they were, where they are from, largely because of transportation costs or also because the cultural ties among neighboring countries, or more culture among neighboring countries is more similar compared to as you move apart. So then the question is, and overall, there are 260 million people in the world who are living in a country different from their country of birth. So here is how I have organized the study. First, we will look at a review of potential effects of immigrants on exports of source country. Then we will look at some empirical findings. After that, we will go for the case of Pakistan and some conclusions and policy recommendation. Literature has identified three main effects of emigration on exports of source country. These include, number one, the transaction cost effect, the transaction cost of trade effect, preference for ethnic goods, and mitigation of asymmetric information. So first, let's look at the transaction cost effect. Immigrants reduce transaction cost of trade because they possess information both about country of origin and the host country. So these transaction costs are could be individual specific, meaning that through personal connections, they establish ties between exporters and importers, or these could be non-individual specific, by which I mean knowledge about country of origins, markets, and institutions, and overcoming language barriers. Both of these can help facilitate trade between countries. Then immigrants' preference for ethnic goods. Immigrants demand goods and services from their home country through their own demand for their source country products, and also they impact tastes of original residents. There is greater acceptance of diversity of population and goods and services more in the host countries of the West, which leads to more demand for ethnic goods such as food, clothing, music, entertainment, etc. And this is reflected in, number one, we find lots of international aisles in grocery stores, okay, selling ethnic foods and other ethnic goods and goods. There are international potlucks at work. And we also find wear a hijab to work day or wear a hijab to school day in some countries. All that is showing here is that there is greater acceptance of other cultures in those countries, which can lead to increase in demand for goods and services, not only by the immigrants, but also by the local population. It is very easy to find samosa nowadays. In my university, they regularly serve samosas in the faculty cafeteria. Then lastly, mitigation of information asymmetries. Both the host and source country have access to the ethnic networks formed by immigrants in the host country. In international trade, exporters usually have better information about the quality of their products and also about their institutional settings than the importers do. So they have an incentive to use the information to their own benefit. Due to this information asymmetry, the importer in the other country may want to introduce some clauses in their trade contract that could lead to inefficient contracts. The ethnic networks that immigrants provide can help reduce this information asymmetries because these ethnic networks possess information not only of the country of origin, but also in the country in which they currently reside. Their knowledge of both countries can also help with contract enforcement So now let's look at some empirical findings. Most studies have used data, most studies that we found in literature have used data for developed countries and have analyzed collective effects of the resident migrants without focusing on any particular country of origin. They estimate gravity model of trade to obtain immigrant elasticities of exports and imports. So one study for Canada by Head and Rice found a statistically significant effect on imports from and exports to its 136 trading partners. Higher impact on imports was due to immigrant preference for home country products and to immigrants' own involvement in import business from countries of origin. For UK, there is another study in which immigrants from, immigrants from non-Commonwealth countries increased both imports and exports. Those from Commonwealth countries increased exports but reduced imports. And then there are some US studies which also found higher immigrant effect on imports from English-speaking countries. There are only 4 country-specific studies, one on Bolivia, one on China, China and Japan, and Pakistan and OECD countries. So I will only go to Pakistan and OECD countries because I have just been told I have 2 minutes left. Next slide. So here is some information on Pakistani immigrants spread all around the world. So unfortunately, the colors are not coming on very well. So what I will do here is that instead of going through this graph, I will go to the next slide where I have shown top 10 destinations of Pakistani immigrants in 2017. Overall, there are a little over 6 million Pakistani origin folks living outside of Pakistan. And I know some people look surprised at India, which looks like the second destination of Pakistani immigrants. And the reason is obvious, that many of these people are the ones who may have migrated when they were young at the time of partition and have also migrated over time. So these immigrants in India could be viewed differently from others because they perhaps do not have as much connection to Pakistan as those residing in other countries. So Saudi Arabia is the topmost destination, followed by India, but those immigrants are different from the other ones. UAE, United Kingdom, US, and then Kuwait, Oman, Canada, Qatar, Singapore. In Canada, there are about 225,000 immigrants as of 2016, 225,000 Pakistani immigrants as of 2016 census. So here we have total exports of Pakistan from 1947 to 2014 plotted in real dollars. There's a steep increase. In the next slide, Pakistani exports to top 10 immigrant destination countries, and which essentially time is over, which essentially tells us that there is no correlation between where immigrants are, which country immigrants are residing and the exports. I'll take 2 minutes more. There are lots of things to say, but I have to skip over them. Okay. This study on Pakistan that I did with Shabir Haider in 2011 was published in Asia Pacific Development Journal, where we computed immigrant elasticities of imports and exports using a gravity model and found significant effects. Pakistani immigrants in OECD countries accounted for a quarter of annual export growth in Pakistani net exports to English-speaking OECD countries. We used pooled cross-section time series data for the period 1990 to 2003. So this is my conclusion slide now. Okay. As their natural growth of population slows down, developed countries will rely increasingly on immigration for their labor force and economic growth. In many Western countries, the growth rate, the natural growth rate of population has even become negative. It's true in some parts of Canada, where natural growth of population has become negative, and they have to rely on immigration for the labor force and economic growth, which means that we will see a lot of people moving from developing countries towards the developed world. Trade policy in developing countries should view their expatriate population as another source of promoting trade. Proper institutional support should be available for expatriates wanting to establish trade relations with their source countries. And we need more data to investigate trade-enhancing effects of immigration at global level to help with evidence-based policy. NADRA collects some good data on demographic composition of overseas Pakistanis, but it's very hard to get those data from NADRA for analytical purpose. And lastly, there is a study by Vora which found that there is strong export growth linkages for Philippines, Malaysia, and Thailand. Similar linkages can be explored for Pakistan, which will further highlight the important role overseas Pakistanis like myself can play in Pakistan's economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Akbari. We'll start taking questions from the audience now.
My name is Kashif and I'm from Development Studies. And my question is that if you, like you said, there is a slow population growth in developed countries and they will rely on immigration. But nowadays, if we are looking at the things, situation in the Europe, things are a little bit contradictory. As people and anti-immigration groups have arisen, and they are saying like we don't need people from outside. So how this will, how you link with this your conclusion? Thank you.
There are different groups who hold different opinions on immigration, and what we have observed is that there is a cycle. A time comes when there is strong anti-immigrant movement, but then that phases out, and then other group comes, takes over. This has been going on for quite some time. So what I think is happening now is a temporary phenomena because the other side is also quite strong. For example, what Angela Merkel did by admitting more than a million immigrants and refugees in 2015. So, and after that, there was a lot of opposition to that, but she still managed to win elections. So these types of waves come and go. However, the reality is that there is a demographic decline. There is a decline in natural growth of population, and politicians in developed countries are realizing that they need immigration, they need people to grow their economy.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm sorry I was late for this panel. I'm Jean-François Cotta, I'm the European Union ambassador to Pakistan. And since you are referring to Europe, I want me just to complete to what the professor was saying. I mean, clearly, what we have seen in Europe for the last 2-3 years is a result of a big surge into unmanaged migration process. Europe was caught by surprise by the conflict in Syria and the wave of Syrian refugees going to Europe. And we were not prepared to that. And then it has been taken up by some populist parties as a tool, actually, to make their point on identity, on a number of issues. But I do agree that we have in Europe an issue of demography, there is no doubt. And what we are looking at, what the reasonable people in Europe are looking at now is how to put in place legal ways of migration to Europe. It's what we need. We know that, for example, let's take your country, as it was said by the professor, you have anything between 6 to 8 million people outside your border currently working mostly in the Gulf countries. So, some of these people, some of your people here, might be needed in Europe for their skills in different sectors. But what we want to see is to have a well-managed and a legal process of migration. People will react to illegal migration, irregular migration, where they feel that they are into brackets, I'm using a lot of brackets, invaded by people who are maybe not welcome. It's not what we're after. What we're after is how we can, all of us, because it's not only Pakistan and the EU, it's all around the world, how can we put in place a system of legal migration? And there was a couple of days ago in Marrakesh a declaration by 150 countries on the new migration compact in the world. And I think it's what we have to put in place. It's a global governance system on migration.
Thank you. Would you like to respond? All right. I just have a takeaway from your talk, Dr. Saab. What I've understood, the central theme of your presentation was that expats, Pakistani expats, should be treated on a policy level more than just as a source of remittances coming into Pakistan. You feel that, and India I think has managed that model far more successfully than we have. Their expats have very good linkages, business linkages with the Indian government. I was hoping you'd be able to perhaps also suggest, as we wrap up the session, what is the major barrier that a Pakistani expat faces in trying to connect with his source country or her source country and trying to create a business or trade, and what would be the major solution? Just one point on each.
Well, your question required a survey to find out from the expatriates themselves what types of barriers they face here. But what we hear anecdotally is the red tape. There's a lot of red tape, but of course that's not only true for Pakistan, for other countries, other developing countries as well. There's a lot of bureaucratic red tape that they have to go through, lots of licenses and permits that they have to obtain, and they have to wait for many months or many years to get a license or to get a permit to start a business. So those kinds of things could be facilitated. I think NADRA is doing a good job in collecting data, and they can do more. We can go through them to conduct these kinds of surveys and explore more. Lack of data is an issue in this area, which I think can be looked at. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Akbari. We move on to our next speaker today, which is Mrs. Anjuma Sadameen, my former colleague at the Ministry of Commerce. A very strong lady, she knows her work. So, ma'am, without any further ado, welcome.
Respected Madam Shandana, very honorable lady, former colleague, friends, His Excellency, Kotain, we all have interacted and we have seen together. Very respected panelists, all three of you. PIDE faculty who is present here. Students from PIDE and from the other universities. It's my honor to be here, and I'm very grateful to PIDE for having me here. Just to clarify that currently I'm not engaged with the Ministry of Commerce, but of course Commerce has been my home past many years where I have worked, and I have retired as Additional Secretary from Ministry of Commerce. So today, what we have gathered here to discuss is how to revitalize the export potential, and I will take the macro view of the national economy, how to revitalize and how to gauge the export potential of Pakistan's economy from the existing resources, and how to generate more resources, and how to set the direction, and how to tap the sources, and how to find out where we have to go, the way forward. In what manner we need to change the policies. But the alarming factor is the trade gap. Despite the export growth, which have sometimes declined and recently it has increased. The trade gap has been widening, and that's a matter of serious concern for us. Despite GSP plus assistance by the EU, which helped Pakistan in a great manner, our trade gap in 2015-16 fiscal year was $24 billion US, which increased to $33 US billion in 2016-17. And then for 17-18, it's $38 billion US. Next, next. Can you do the next slide? Yes, this is the widening gap in Pakistan's trade. Currently $38 US billion, as I mentioned, and it has widened throughout the years past, 2004-5 until 2018, almost 15 years. It's been widening. Growth in imports has been higher than the growth in exports. Next, please. In the recent past, the most alarming phase has been from 14-15, 15-16, and 16-17, as I already mentioned, that our trade gap has widened because our exports did not keep pace with the growth in imports. There have been 19% fall between 2015 to 2017. 2016-17. In the last decade, Pakistan's share in the global trade declined by 18%, whereas our competitors' share doubled during the same time period. Next, please. Very sharp rise in imports in the past 3 years, which we attribute to 5 major import commodities, of which the top 2 have a positive impact because we know that imports of intermediary goods and the imports of machinery help industrialization and growth. So it's a positive sign for growth. But imports of disposable items, which are consumed and not further utilized for enhancing the growth, must be curtailed and checked. Some imports, like industrial and agriculture imports and machinery, are investment driven. The demand is generated because there's more investment. There's expansion in the industrialization. However, there are many other factors, and I don't want to indulge into that because our focus is export potential. I just touch upon imports because the trade gap includes exports and imports, and we need to. Next, the challenges. What have been the challenges? We need to highlight the challenges because once we highlight the challenges, only then we'll be able to cater for the challenges and find the solution or the way forward. So I have 5 minutes left. Okay, the factors contributing to the, yeah, please, next slide. The factors contributing to to declining exports. Many of you are students of economics, and you know that for trade or exports, we develop export demand equation and export supply equation. So although we are talking about exports, but on the demand side, there are 5 major factors. On the supply side, there are 5 major factors that I identified which could be responsible or which are actually upcoming as a challenge to be tackled. On the demand side, contraction of global markets, exogenous factor, there's nothing we can do about that. Market access, proximity, global economy, a lot in trade is determined in the context of political context. Why we don't have very high regional trade? That's political economy. Our neighbors, India, and other neighbors. So that's one exogenous factor for the time being. Low FDI inflows comes from abroad, exogenous, declining foreign incomes, exogenous, low prices of substitutes, all exogenous for us. On the supply side, there are two exogenous factors, but the rest are endogenous, where we can use policy tools or where we can do something at the national level. Currency exchange rate, that have been taken care of recently, which earlier affected our supply of exports, because exports have been very expensive until dollar achieved its market parity. Availability of imports as intermediary goods and the commodity crunch, because imports of the intermediary goods have not been that smooth, and there have been tariffs, so that needed to be tackled, and it has been recently handled by the Ministry of Commerce, by the government of Pakistan. One major issue for enhancing exports or utilizing the export potential is policy fragmentation, which is my favorite issue about which I want to talk next. Competitiveness crisis, which is connected with the energy crisis, our limited domestic capacity, our resource base, our skill base, our industrial base, our agriculture base. And we are lagging behind in technological development. And that has impact on productivity of industrial goods as well as agriculture goods. Next, please. Just to mention that Pakistan's share of agriculture products was in the GDP, which used to be 20% approximately in 2008, has drastically as well as gradually reduced to 13%, which goes back equal to what we had in 1960s. So it's a matter of serious concern for us. Policy fragmentation. We want to export and we want to promote the growth of certain items, but then if we are trying to promote exports of agricultural goods, does Ministry of Agriculture know what we want to do at Ministry of Commerce? And have they done the spade work? Have they put up and set up the systems, and have they acquired the skills or the knowledge or the capacity for phytosanitary standards? Do they have the labs? Does Board of Investment really promote setting up the industry which actually has the potential for Pakistan's export growth that Ministry of Commerce is now focusing at? Our Ministry of Commerce has signed an FTA, free trade agreement, and we have gotten access, market access in number of products which we want to export. Do we have echo in Board of Investment? Are they doing necessary work? Is there a voice in NAVTEC and TIVTA that these products are going to be exported in next 5 or 10 years, and this is where we want to invest, and this much skilled labor is required in next 10 years? Are all these policies interconnected? Are these policies coherent? Is Ministry of Finance and FBR aware, or are they convinced that we need to remove tariffs from certain commodities? So, all these areas, they have to be coherent. They have to be synced and they have to be harmonized with each other. If they are not, one policy is going in one direction and the other is opposing that policy direction, and the impact may be little, zero, or even negative. So this is one major issue towards which we need to pay attention. Water and power, energy, which is the main ingredient. If we are promoting industrialization and there's lack of energy, what will happen? Whatever has happened recently in past years when we had shortages of energy. Next, kar de. Next, please. Competitiveness crisis, I'll skip that. Its cost and access to energy and overvaluation Pakistani rupees, increase in import tariffs, liquidity crunch, which I have already covered, but cost of energy in Pakistan was increasing. Competitors had better energy costs or the exchange rate or whatever. Competitiveness challenges and structural issues. Next, please. These are structural issues which need to be addressed in over the long term. High input cost tariffs, energy, labor, low labor productivity, liquidity crunch, stuck-up refunds, internal issue, low FDI inflows, low trade-related investment, all these are interconnected to each other, and resultantly very low ranking. Global competitiveness index is 115, 138, that's where we are. Doing business, we are at 147 in the list of 190. Enabling trade, we are at 122 out of 136. Next. So what's the potential? What is untapped, which could be gauged? According to one data analysis that is by International Trade Center, Pakistan has 10 to 14 billion US dollar trade potential, which could be tapped in short term without much structural interventions. This is existing potential for which we need to put right our direction for choosing and focusing on the right products and on the right markets. So the products, according to that analysis, include apparels, home textile products, leather products, cereals, rice, cement, medical instruments, polythene, whatever. Markets, US, China, Germany, UK, UAE, France, Netherlands, and Spain. Next, please. You won't be able to read it, but the first, this shows the potential, the product-wise potential. So the yellow ones are the highest potential, and the size and the color, it shows the potential. Men's trousers and shorts, women trousers and shorts, bed linen, cotton, toilet, kitchen, linen, semi-milled or wholly milled rice, citrus fruit. This is from the top 30 products. Next, please. Next. टाइम तो हो गया, मुझे 2 मिनट चाहिए कंक्लूड करने के लिए. And this is export potential in terms of region or the countries. The inner circle shows the existing exports, and the outer circle shows the untapped potential of the exports. Next, please. This graph I have also taken from International Trade Center, and the yellow balls, they show that Pakistan's exports to these countries, the rate of growth of Pakistan's exports to these countries is lower than their growth in imports of the same products from the rest of the world. So we have potential there. Next, please. Somewhere I read the resolve that we want to improve our global competitiveness index from 115 to 80, doing business to 90 to 70. And to me, this seems like New Year's resolve that we do in December, that I'll lose 20 kilo of weight and I'll walk every day for 1 hour. And I mean, this was one of the resolve I read somewhere, but it's not going to happen unless all the parameters are put in place. Next, please, the way forward. So there are 2 slides. The way forward is in addressing policy fragmentation. Enhancing exports is not one ministry's subject or the issue. It's a national level issue. It requires coherent national policies and strategies, I have already discussed. Market access, FTAs, is to leverage trade potential in Pakistan's product markets, but the diversification message needs to go to agriculture ministry. It needs to go to the the Ministry of Industries. There has to be tariff rationalization, and it has to be coherent. We have to make sure through tariff rationalization, and this has to be sorted out between FBR and the Ministry of Commerce, whether we are going to, where are we going to take tariff rationalization policy, tariff policy? Are we going to make sure that intermediary products or the goods are imported at a price that is acceptable and that promotes the growth of industry? We have to have a strong and broad palette. We have to have resource base, we have to have skill base in agriculture sector, in industries. We have to have skilled human resources, land, labor, and capital. We have to have skilled labor, we have to have capital, and we have to have entrepreneurship. Energy, we already discussed energy and competitiveness, they go together. Next way forward, last. And I would just like to mention that upcoming opportunity or the potential to gauge Pakistan's exports is CPEC. That is going to provide us a great opportunity through improved transportation network, better market access to the existing and the new markets like Central Asian Regional Economic Cooperation countries, TANs. We need to cater to the WTO regulations. We need to gear up to the intellectual property rights, standards, phytosanitary, sanitary. This is time for us to strengthen the capacity for implementation of WTO regulations. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a great presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, in timekeeping, I think my main interest is to ensure that you get the best of all our speakers. So in doing so, I'm going to take a U-turn from my earlier statement. I will not allow any questions right now. What I will do is go on to our next 2 speakers so that you may benefit from their expertise. And then I'll cut down on my 5 minutes and maybe even not speak except to say thank you, because I think there's so much information and so much knowledge here that we need to hear them speak. So we have now Mr. Fayaz Hussain Sahib, Joint Director, State Bank of Pakistan. And after that, we have then His Excellency, the Ambassador of the European Union, Mr. Jean-François. So over to you, sir.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So, like after their talk, letter is left for me, and the time is also very short. So I will try to be quick. So first, I will start with the current situation, then the reasons for this situation, and then the way forward. So current situation is that it seems that export expansion never got the status of national development strategy. Look at the share of Pakistan exports in the world exports and other countries. It is very obvious from the graph. Pakistan is at the bottom. Then this is the table. Look at Pakistan's share as percent of GDP. It increased from 10% to 13.2%. And then look at like Bangladesh, it has increased to around 14.9% from 3.8%. And then similarly, if you look at India, it is 4.4 to 11.5%. So this is like recent trends. Pakistan is at the bottom, and now we have reached to around 8.2% of GDP. These are our exports, so the situation is very alarming. And now if you want to compare Pakistan exports as a percent of GDP, then you should compare it with Afghanistan and then some African countries, so we have gone so low. And what are the possible reasons for this like very poor performance? One is like it is always demand and supply. So on the demand side, Pakistan is supplying or exporting the products whose demand in the international market is not growing that much. Like if I look at the international market, then the international trade, the share of machinery and transport equipment is 36.5%. And Pakistan's share in that category is only 1.2%. So there is the potential in high value added, and we are exporting low value added. So this is like where there is demand, we are not producing those products, and where there is little demand, we are producing those low value added products. So this is on the demand side. On the supply side, I have like taken the exports which are similar to India. These are rice, cotton, textile, clothing, sport goods, and leather products. And then I've chosen similar markets because we also export to US and EU. India also export to US and EU. So if you look after like 1991, 92, then there is clear difference. The Indian export share in the world exports has increased, but Pakistan has stagnated. So it means that demand is there in the US and the EU and other export markets. There are supply side constraints. So we have not been able to like tap that demand. And where is the difference with India? This is the share of manufacturing in the GDP. If you look at Pakistan, its share of manufacturing in the GDP is declining. If you look at India, it is increasing. So if you have strong industrial base, you have the potential to exports, then you will meet the world demand. If you are like industry, there is deindustrialization, premature deindustrialization, that you may not be able to meet the world demand. So this is another reason. And this is like the South Asian chart where Pakistan fares badly in most of the global competitiveness indicators. The only indicator where Pakistan is above the South Asian, that is the market size. In all other indicators, we are below. This is the export prices, unit value. Pakistan again is on the bottom because we export low value added exports, and it seems that our strategy has been to increase the market share by slashing export prices. So that is the reason that our exports are not increasing. And other reason is overvalued exchange rate. So this graph I have taken from The Economist, which is the famous Big Mac index based overvaluation. So when there is overvaluation, you are hurting the tradable sectors, and there is like misallocation from tradable sector to non-tradable sectors which have lower potential for export. So this is another reason for the low exports of Pakistan. This is the comparison at a point in time with other countries. So if Pakistan is like on the overvalued side, and most of the countries are on the undervalued side. So their exchange rate are undervalued. So we have competitive disadvantage over here. If you look at the concentration of exports, it has gone worse over a period of time. If you look in 1970s, 80s, then we were exporting to Asia, then others, Africa, Europe, and North America. And if you look at 2010, then there is more concentration. So this is again bad news. Other structural factors, cost of business starting up procedures. In Pakistan, it has increased by 30%, and then it is like followed by Turkey. In other countries, they have improved. So this is again the cost side. And then there is the value loss due to electrical shortages. Again, Pakistan is at the top, and it is 2013. The situation has improved on this front now, so let's hope that that will help increase our exports. This is like very low FDI in Pakistan, which means that lower transfer of technology in Pakistan and lower productivity. So that again hurt our like exports. So these were the reasons. Way forward, which is the theme of our conference. this is actually the potential, as Madam was also pointing out, that this is the share of partners in world imports. China is importing from the world on average like 10% its share, but Pakistan's share in the China's imports is around 6%, so there is a potential. And in the presence of CPEC, you can increase exports there. Then in Germany, there is potential. In Japan, there is potential. In US, it is almost on the 45-degree line, so you are close to potential. So these are the potential markets. Then in the upper panel, the winners in the growing sectors, high value added textile. That is the only sector which has higher demand in the world, and we are exporting there. But in the bottom, if you look at the rice and the cotton, these are the losers in the declining sectors. So again, we have to increase the value addition to reap the benefits of the world demand, if we can. And then this is the very important, productivity and wages. So if we have to increase our competitiveness, we'll have to increase our productivity. And like a lot of panelists have talked about this, that how we can increase productivity, and primarily that is through increase in human development, so human capital, basically. And these are the other factors. In the short term, you can rationalize taxation structure, because the industry is contributing most to the national exchequer. Around 60% of the revenue are there. So, but services and agriculture is not. So if that sector is taxed, then definitely there will be resource misallocation from there to other sectors of the economy. And then definitely you cannot, there are other measures, which is role of research and development, targeted security development. So thank you so very much. I tried to be in time.
Thank you, Fayaz Saib. If we were giving out prizes today, you come first for being in time. Ambassador Jean-Francois of the European Union, we'd like you to please share your views with us. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Good afternoon. And actually, I did not know that I was supposed to say something. I thought I was just here, to co-chair with you. But anyhow, just maybe a couple of remarks. I mean, you have all heard about GSP Plus, and it was mentioned by Madame Adjoum before. It's interesting because looking at the presentation, it's something I knew already, but it's clear that GSP Plus, which we have seen an increase by 50%, 50, of export from Pakistan to the EU over the last 4 years, is clearly a market which has been diverted from other markets to the EU, because Pakistan with GSP Plus, where there is no tax, no duties entering the EU market for anything produced in Pakistan, it's a comparative advantage for Pakistan to export to the EU. So obviously the industry has taken this advantage, or is now exporting more to the EU than to other markets, especially, for example, the US market. I will come back to that, to this specific issue of comparative advantage. The second issue when it comes to GSP Plus is, as you may know, it's also, it's not a free lunch. It's something that Pakistan came to the EU to get. So to get this advantage, this trade facility. And we have given it to Pakistan because we feel that it is helping Pakistan in developing its own industry. But at the same time, the rule of the game is that we are expecting Pakistan to improve the implementation of a number of international conventions which are linked to labor rights, to human rights, and environment, and good governance. If I'm mentioning that, is because I do feel also that the two are links. I mean by that, not only do you get a comparative advantage in accessing the EU market, but if Pakistan improves its record in terms of labor rights, human rights, it will give also a better image to Pakistan outside. And people will be looking at things which are produced in Pakistan in a more positive way than maybe they would do otherwise. I think it's very important. I was posted in another Asian countries before coming to your country, And I can tell you that this country where we had, and we still have, unfortunately, a number of human rights issues, we had in Europe very large and very popular campaigns against this country on asking consumers not to buy from this country. So the opposite is right. I mean, if you have a country which has a good reputation, a good image, people will be much more inclined to buy from your country. So I think it's also important to keep that in mind. So for me, GSP Plus should be for Pakistan a win-win situation, better access to the market, but also improving the image of Pakistan abroad. My second point is when I look at all these interesting slides on potential markets for Pakistan, I'm really amazed to see that there is nothing on the region. You are talking about Germany, you are talking about the US, you are talking about Japan, there is nothing about the region. You are living in a region where you have 60% of the population. I'm talking about China and India. 16% of the world population. I mean, Pakistan is at the heart of a less integrated region in the world. SAARC, the intra-trade for SAARC is 5% of the global SAARC trade. In the EU, it's 70%, 65 to 70%. I mean, for me, one of the priorities for export to Pakistan should be also at political level on how can we, as Pakistan and other countries in the region, can we tap into this potential of regional trade. So I think that is my second point I would like to make here. And then the last one, coming back to GSP Plus, it's more a kind of question to you because you are all experts and economists and experts into economies. The question is on GSP Plus, on how GSP Plus is benefiting really Pakistan in terms of competitiveness. Is it really helping your industry in terms of competitiveness? By giving the industry here in Pakistan, especially the textile industry, for example, or leather industry, this comparative advantage of entering the EU market by paying no duties there, are we really helping your industry in becoming more competitive? So it's a question mark. I don't have a reply to that, but I think it might be an interesting field also to explore here in Pakistan. Obviously, your industry is going to kill me when I'm saying that, but I mean, I think it's important at least to keep in mind and to see how, beside all the different elements you were putting in place in terms of what are the obstacles in terms of competitiveness for Pakistan, is GSP Plus a disincentive for competitiveness in Pakistan? Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Jean-Francois of the European Union. I'm sorry we took you by surprise. I thought you already knew that we were going to ask you for a couple of comments. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid we are running out of time. So we've been asked by the organizers not to entertain any questions and answers. What we can do is, I think, yes, sir.
Right, we have re-engineered the schedule.
Oh,
We cancelled the tea break.
Excellent.
And so we will continue the session
Till
5:30. 5:30, where the second section will continue.
Okay.
That's the only way to accommodate this.
We have better news. We've cancelled your tea. You can ask questions, but you're not getting any tea. So I don't know which is worse, no questions or no tea. So please go ahead. We all have all our panelists in front of you. Please do ask. Certainly.
First question is, Your Excellency, that when developed country was in the race of development, developed countries were favoring free trade policy. Now when we are in the race of development, they are adopting protectionist policies. Trump is adopting protectionist policies against China, and we are denied market access in European as well as US market. So is it not injustice with developing countries? My first question. Second question is with the last paper presenter, that you said that there is a supply constraint, that we cannot supply our goods to developed countries. My point of view is that there is no supply constraint. We can produce that goods, we can export to that market. The issue is market access. When I was doing PhD in Geneva, WTO Secretariat, developing countries want market access. Now, as West is going for protectionist policies, Trump is constructing wall on Mexican borders, I think we should not look towards West. We should look towards East, and that is Chinese policies which talk about connectivity. And as Iqbal has already said, look towards the sun which is rising from the east. So we should not look towards the west no more, and look towards the east and adopt regional integration policy, because this era is the revival of regionalism. When Trump says that America first and regional integration, we should not follow that policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. First of all, as far as I know, the United States of America are not part of the European Union, not yet. So please don't put everybody in the same basket in the West, the same way that I will never put all together, you know, all the Asian countries. I think they are cliches, and I think we should go beyond that. We are very clear as the European Union. We are very clear that we need free markets. We need access market for everybody. We are the one who are currently, not only the EU as an institution, but also the 28 member states of the EU, we are the one fighting to keep international governance at different levels, the UN, WTO, everything. And on that, we have a good ally, by the way, here in Pakistan, and we share that with Pakistan, and we are very pleased to share that with Pakistan, because we do feel that it's a way to go. It's no question to go back to protectionism, to regionalism, or whatever. That I'm very, very clear on that. When it comes to connectivity, if I may, it was not to me, but I would like to reply to that as well. We are also, I mean, connectivity is part of the DNA of the EU. I mean, we have been born on connectivity. We have built everything on connectivity in the EU, being connectivity, physical connectivity, being knowledge connectivity, everything, people connectivity. So we would also like to build that with Asia. We may have a different approach than China, for example, because China, at least when I look at CPEC here, it's very much based on physical infrastructures, which is good, which is needed in Pakistan, and as well, you know, energy and things like that. From the EU side, what we are saying is that, yes, that is important, but we want also to build a much more holistic connectivity, which is also about people, about knowledge, about IT, which should be sustainable as well, both from an environmental point of view, from a financial point of view as well. We don't want to see, you know, countries falling into a debt trap. So that is also at the core of our connectivity approach with Asia and with other countries.
Like I was talking about, if you talk about the supply side, it's really your GDP growth. So if you look at your growth, and as like you might have read the Dr. Ishrat's books, Governing the Ungovernable, so you are on continuous decline from 1990s onward. Before that, and I have also shown you the graph, the divergence between Pakistan's and Indian exports. So it like started from 1990s onward. So basically after that, if you look at the growth, that is called the lost decade, 1990s. And even after that, your growth is low. And there is now there is the debate, like the potential of the Pakistan economy has come down. Like when you went up to 5.5% of the growth, you are not able to sustain that growth. So if you cannot sustain the high growth, you have supply side constraints. And then there was another examples of the energy shortages. Most of the industries were operating under capacity. They were not fully utilizing their capacity because of the energy constraints. So if you you cannot supply the energy to your industries, then they will not be able to meet the external demand. So this was, and then there was law and order situation, because of that situation, you were not able to meet the orders. There were cancellation of the orders. So there were like lot of factors which were in my mind when I was saying that there is supply constraints, and because of that, we have not been able to export that much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My question is that in our maiden visit of the Prime Minister to China, one of the takeaways was that China will double its imports from Pakistan. Currently, I think it is $1.5 billion, and perhaps the target is to take it to $3 billion during the current financial year. The 6 months are already over. So do we have exportable surplus vis-a-vis China? Can we realize this award aim, and we are so talking about it and we are hyper about it? Is there any exportable surplus that we can realize this takeaway? Thank you.
I am Afzal Khan, student of PhD Econometrics at PIDE. My question is to Ms. Anjum Asad Amin. You have presented with all the slides in the presentation might be corrected, but there is a mistake which should be corrected. You have shown Pakistan's exports trend medium to short term. That graph starts from measurement scale from 10 points and ends at 26 with the gap of 4 points. According to my knowledge, in the bar charts, it should start from 0, not from 10. So it's a bad visualization of the data. Adjust your data according to the nature of the data. Thank you.
I am Ishtiaq from State Bank. My question is from Ms. Anjum. It's very amazing for me that everybody is talking about the deficit, the exports are not growing, imports are growing, but nobody even discussed about the FTAs that we have signed. If you look into the FTA with China, we were at side surplus, or we were at equal with the China. After the FTAs, the Chinese products just bombarded our markets. Our local industry shut down. If you look into the footwear, the small scale industries. So we were just a packaging company for China. We have seen that things were imported and they were packed here. So if you were in the commerce ministry, so while we are going for the signing in FTAs, what was in the mind like in these things? So might you will be in better position to comment for the list that we signed with the China. Thank you.
One last question. My name is Junaid Kamal and I'm from State Bank. My question is for Ms. Anjum Asad. As you rightly mentioned in your presentation that we have huge export potential with our regional countries. So my question is that we have signed SAFTA in 2005, so, but we haven't much benefited from that. So how to revitalize SAFTA as we have large negative lists in the SAFTA? So that's my question.
Thank you very much. My name is Imran Zia. I am from the National Tariff Commission of Pakistan. I have one comment taking advantage of the presence of Madam Chandana in today's this session, because she is representing the government, that now since we are in the process of reforms, the most urgent reform which we require for so long and which is a very successful model in the Far East Asian countries is to bring together Ministry of Industries, Ministry of Trade and Board of Investment together and Ministry of Textile, so that we have a coherent industrial investment trade policy. And from this year, it's a good sign that the tariff policy is being formulated by the Ministry of Commerce. So once we have these things, the policy is correct, and we have a overarching policy board which should oversee the implementation of all these policies together and correct it after every quarter. I think that will be the starting point to have a joint effort in making all these policies, industrial policy, trade policy, tariff policy, and investment policy. And once we move together, then we can, I think, utilize the potentials which we are discussing for the last 20 years, that we have potential in this sector or that sector. But I think there is need, first of all, to correct the policy level obstacles and then move forward to other things. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My question is to the ambassador. Just like sir, I used to agree with him that we should have a policy making which help us. Sorry, I'm Sama Kesa. I'm from business student. My question is that if we could make a policy that could ease the the doing of business, because it is the era of a small and business mediums, right? So it will help us in 4 things if we could work on the 4 things. Number 1 is business setup and market setup. Number 2 is knowledge connectivity. If our students go there and study and then come back, it will be a huge potential to increase our HDI, right? Number 3 is business connectivity. If we make good policies and for the startup cost, just like the sir said, the Pakistani cost is so expensive that any individual cannot do business even in Pakistan, right? So we should develop such policies that could help our graduates to go there and set up their businesses. So it will connect more business and get the youth into the employment. And the number 4 is such policies should be introduced which will be effectable and appreciable for all, not just for one or middle class or elites. Thank you very much.
I do not have a question. I would just like to inform the panelists and the audience that I'm a member of the Economic Advisory Council, and I am also working on a subgroup on exports and competitiveness, and I'm just very glad to report that many of the constraints that have been identified which restrict Pakistan's trade potential and integration into the world markets have been addressed by a very comprehensive draft report that the subgroup has prepared, and we have taken note of almost all the issues that have been raised. So that is something positive that I wanted to share, that the group has worked very hard, and hopefully some of the actionable measures will come to the forefront very soon. So thank you. At the moment, it's not public because the ESC has not been convened and the report has not been presented to the Economic Advisory Council as yet. It has just been shared amongst the subgroup members. As soon as the Prime Minister approves the report, I suppose it should become public. There's nothing, because it is actually a compilation of many of the government documents and some research done by universities. So there's no confidentiality as such.
Okay, thank you very much for pointing out the bad graph. I will certainly revisit and amend it. Right? The person who asked me, who mentioned that the graph was bad. So I'll revisit that. Thank you. And the next question that was asked from me was the FTA, China FTA. As you know, FTA with China was signed in 2006 and implemented in 2007. And after that, 2 rounds of negotiation have taken place. And the first phase of FTA have been implemented, and then second phase is practically yet to start. Ministry of Commerce has engaged with the Chinese MOFCOM, the relevant ministry, to revisit, to incorporate. It's over past 10 years, it's a dynamic process. The product mix innovation has changed many things in China as well as in Pakistan. Competitiveness, a range of products have changed, so there's need to revisit, and Commerce has engaged itself with China to revisit the FTA towards benefiting Pakistan. And China has realized that FTA, CPFTA, China-Pakistan, should benefit Pakistan more than it should benefit China due to small and large country difference. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I'd like to thank all our panelists, starting from Dr. Rashid Aftab, Professor Athar Akbari, Mrs. Anjum Asad Amin, Mr. Fayaz Hussain, and of course, Ambassador of the European Union to Pakistan, Ambassador Jean-Francois. I'd also like to thank PIDE, PSDE for organizing this event, the lovely students, excellent questions. For my part, I'd like to wrap up by giving some good news, because we've heard some really bad news on why things went bad and how they went bad. Lovely to meet you, ma'am, finally. I will be making you a G2G request for sharing the particular draft report, because we're working on something similar. So I'll give you all that I have in exchange for what you have. Perhaps one good thing, which is a takeaway from all of this, that people are in thinking mode. Things are changing, people are talking. I haven't seen this for the last 3 years were good, but politically there was so much happening that we were not able to realize. This work has been happening in Pakistan for a while now. That's not fair to say that nobody else worked before us, but politically I can say that this is the beginning of a new era, in that there's a recognition that people make mistakes. It's not necessary for everybody to be the bad guy, but people make mistakes, and you have to correct those mistakes. And that's where we are right now. We're doing mid-course corrections. The gentleman talking about the FTA, young man, when you do an FTA, the idea is that both countries should benefit. It's not that just Pakistan should benefit. Why would anybody do an FTA with us if it was only to our benefit? Sure, China's your great friend. It's always helped you. It's bailed you out so many times in such difficult times. But that doesn't mean that they would forget about their population. To them, their population comes first, as it should. The imbalances that we may have seen from the FTAs or any of the other trade agreements, you may not know that with the Sri Lanka-Pakistan FTA, we actually have a surplus or the balance is on our side, let's put it that way. On policy, ma'am rightly mentioned that Pakistan has seen so many policies over the last few years. It's not that we lack policy. What we lack is effective policy cohesion. Are they all going in the same direction? Are they going in 15 different directions? As Imran Zia Sahib mentioned, that now we have, for the first time, at least on the surface level, we have United Commerce, Industry, Textile, Production, and Board of Investment with one advisor, which is Razak Daud Sahib, my boss. The next step, hopefully, will be to ensure that this becomes one large ministry. We'll see if we can manage that. There are always sensitivities. If we can do that, then the third step is now connecting to the provinces. 3 provinces at least we can connect to. That doesn't mean politically we will not reach out to Sindh as well, government of Sindh, because the idea is to have cohesive industrial production, textile investment policies. After the 18th Amendment, you have 4 different board of investments in your provinces, and guess what happens when you have that? Everybody's running after the same divisible pool of investment that comes in from abroad or from your local investors. So there has to be a whole new world of cohesive policy coming together. We need to talk to each other. We need to talk to the provinces. The ministries need to talk to each other. On CARIC, there was a lot of discussion. We're going ahead with CARIC for regional connectivity. That will be the biggest boon for Pakistan. SARC is a very sad story, but the good news is that my Prime Minister already stated in his 100-day speech that if trade with India is good for Pakistan and for Pakistanis, he'll do that as well, given our 70-year history. So when you have signals like that, that's already good news, that we're willing to look at new ways on the basis of equality, on the basis of respect, but we are going to look at new ways of doing business. With that, I end my speech. I think we're going to have a session now on shields, prizes. I leave that to the rest of you, but thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much to all participants for this enlightening session. I would like to request Ms. Chandana Gulzar to distribute the shields to guest of honor and the panelists. May I please call upon His Excellency Jean-Francois Coutin to receive the shield? Thank you. May I please request Ms. Anjum Asad Amin? Professor Athar Akbari, Dr. Rashid Aftab, Mr. Fayaz Hussain, and may I please request Dr. Asad Zaman, VC PIDE, to present shield to Ms. Chandana Gulzar Khan. Thank you very much.